You know that feeling, right? Where you're so mentally drained that making just one more tiny choice feels, well, impossible. We usually just chalk it up to being tired. But what if it's more than that? What if it's a measurable biological process that actually degrades the quality of our thinking? This isn't about weak willpower. This is about decision fatigue. It's a hidden cost that affects all of us, especially professionals making high-stakes choices day in and day out. So, let me start with a pretty intense question. Could something as simple as the time of day literally decide a person's fate? The answer, as shocking as it sounds, might just be yes. Take a look at this chart. It tells a truly unbelievable story. Researchers analyzed over 1,000 parole rulings from really experienced Israeli judges, and what they found was wild. At the beginning of the day, right after a break, the judges granted parole about 65% of the time. But as the morning dragged on, that number just plummeted, dropping to almost zero right before their next break. And then, after that break, bam, it shot right back up to 65%. We're not talking about rookies here. These are seasoned pros whose judgment was being systematically hijacked by the clock. And this isn't just about judges. This whole thing is like a silent threat, operating in the background of our most important professions. So what is actually happening inside the brain to cause this? Okay, the first thing we have to get straight is that decision fatigue is not a moral failing. It's not a sign of a weak character. It's a real physical process. It's all about a shift in your brain's neurochemistry that literally changes how you make choices when your cognitive gas tank is running low. So let's peel back the layers and actually look at the biology behind this mental burnout. Because it turns out it's way more complex and honestly way more fascinating than we used to think. For years, the popular story, the myth, was that willpower was like a muscle that ran on sugar. You know, run out of glucose, you run out of self-control. Simple. But here's the thing. Large-scale studies have totally failed to back this up. The new science paints a much different picture. It's not about fuel, it's about economics. As you make more and more decisions, your brain starts to shift its internal cost-benefit analysis. The perceived cost of trying hard just goes way up. And this cost-benefit meeting is happening in what you can think of as the CEO of the brain, mostly the prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex. These parts are in charge of all our high-level thinking, planning, controlling impulses, and most importantly, deciding whether the payoff of a tough mental task is actually worth the effort. And when this CEO gets tired, it starts looking for ways to cut corners. This whole shift is driven by chemical signals. Think of dopamine as the brain's go signal. It's the chemical that motivates you to put in the work. As you get tired, dopamine signaling can drop. At the exact same time, a compound called adenosine, which is basically the brain's brake pedal, starts to build up. Adenosine puts the brakes on dopamine and makes that feeling of effort feel so much heavier. It's your brain literally telling you to stop spending so much energy. Okay, so we've got the biology, but what's the professional price tag for all of this? Because it goes way beyond just feeling a bit tired. It has serious, real-world consequences in some really high-stakes fields. The impact is just crystal clear across the board. In the legal world, fatigue leads to just defaulting to the status quo, which means denying parole. In medicine, it leads to what's called diagnostic conservatism. A doctor late in the day is more likely to just prescribe unnecessary antibiotics because it's an easier choice than a complex diagnosis. And in finance, tired analysts are way more likely to take shortcuts, like just agreeing with what everyone else is saying instead of doing their own deep dive. And yeah, this has a very real financial cost. One study of loan officers found that this decision fatigue cost a single bank an estimated $500,000 in lost revenue in just 1 month. That's the price you pay for tired, suboptimal decisions. So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. When the CEO of your brain gets tired, it doesn't just clock out. Instead, it starts to drift. It steers you toward the easiest possible path, the default option, the simple answer, and the short-term fix. It's just trying to conserve energy by avoiding the really hard work of complex, long-term thinking. Now, I know that all sounds a little bleak, but understanding the problem is just the first step. The good news is, the research gives us a really powerful and actionable toolkit to fight back. So the most effective way to tackle this isn't just a single life hack. It's a 3-layered defense system. It starts with aligning with our biology, then building some external strategic supports, and finally, it's about cultivating the right internal mindset. Layer 1 is all about working with your brain, not against it. Research shows that taking super short micro breaks, we're talking just 2 to 5 minutes every hour or so, can massively preserve the quality of your decisions. And beyond that, it's about syncing with your chronotype. Know if you're a morning person or a night owl, and schedule your biggest, most important decisions for your personal peak time. This isn't a luxury, it's a core professional responsibility. Layer 2 is about building strategic scaffolding. Basically, you're externalizing your brain's CEO. This means using simple tools like checklists. Think about the WHO surgical safety checklist that has dramatically cut down surgical errors. It means creating smart defaults like opt-out systems for organ donation, where the path of least resistance is actually the best one. And it means using cognitive batching, grouping similar tasks together to avoid that massive energy drain from constantly switching gears. And the final layer is the internal one, our mindset. For so many high achievers, perfectionism is a huge, unnecessary driver of mental exhaustion. That constant need to control everything and avoid any mistake is just draining. Clinical approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy give us really powerful tools to reframe those perfectionist thoughts and just reduce that self-imposed mental weight. A really wonderful way to think about this comes from ACT. It suggests you treat that perfectionist part of your brain like a really worried friend. It means well, but its advice is often not helpful. So you can listen to it, you can acknowledge the concern, you can thank it for trying to protect you, and then you gently choose to do what you know is right, not what the fear is telling you to do. Ultimately, this whole conversation comes down to one final critical question. In a world of constant demands, your focus, your ability to do deep, high-quality thinking, is your single most valuable professional asset. So the real question is, are you protecting and managing it like one?